Hello everybody and welcome to the first of our four-part webinar series that is highlighting the topics of interest according to our customers and partners. My name is Danny. I'll be assisting Florian today in the background with the webinar, starting out with a couple of housekeeping rules. The webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes. That includes a Q&A at the end of his presentation. Your phone lines and computer mics are muted, but we of course encourage you to ask any questions that you have in the Q&A chat of your webinar panel. And finally, today's presentation will be recorded and also sent to all registrants after its conclusion. Quickly going through the agenda today, Florian's going to give you an introduction of what Panagenda is and does. He'll go through what ApplicationInsights is for those of you who have not had the opportunity to use it before. He will highlight the benefits of modernizing your application landscapes with AI, ApplicationInsights, and finally to the crux of the presentation, what's new in ApplicationInsights 1.5. And as I said, at the end there will be time for Q&A. And again, we encourage you to write your questions in the question panel. So Florian, with that, I hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danny. So, let's get started for today. Just a quick introduction of who Panagenda is. For those of you who don't know us, we help customers and business partners monitor, analyze, optimize, and transform collaborative infrastructure of pretty much any kind. Our customers currently run more than 10 million licenses of our portfolio in over 70 countries, and we're working pretty much all across the globe with our customers and various partners. Also, a quick reminder of what ApplicationInsights is, so as to not have too much of a steep learning curve, like just going into all the news of version 1.5. ApplicationInsights is a turnkey virtual software appliance, meaning you can download it as a VMware image, either for VMware Workstation or a vSphere, or for Microsoft Hyper-V. Then you just mount it and upload a Notes ID file, and with ApplicationInsights you can then analyze your entire IBM Domino environment. That then carves out all the details you need to know about your applications and mail-in databases, provides you with an environment and inventory overview across your entire database landscape for applications and mail-in databases. It shows and collects usage from IBM Notes rich clients as well as browser clients. It reveals design complexity across your application and mail-in database landscape. It reveals design insights, which we'll be looking at a little bit later on again too, where we start with searching your entire design with a total of 62 design patterns that you can then later on also extend. On top of that, we also analyze for design similarity to understand which databases have similar designs, so not just same design, which databases serve as template candidates for other databases irregardless of template settings, and all of the above is continuously collected for as long as your image runs in your environment. So we continuously collect usage and design data as well as all the data needed to render the overviews. This is what the status dashboard, or kind of the introductory screen of ApplicationInsights, what it looks like. And those of you who have already installed ApplicationInsights will notice two things that are kind of new in here. One is the primary area of custom insights that we'll be covering in just a bit. And then there's also been some good adjustments around the catalog, as well as some enhancements around the status area, which by far isn't everything. So I've just emphasized three major areas here where you can see that already in the status screen. ApplicationInsights provides you with a menu to navigate the various areas. So whether you want to investigate usage of your applications, or you want to investigate the environment overview of how many database instances are used from a per replica ID perspective or across all instances. I'm in particular not going into all the details. In this particular webinar, there's a recorded one that introduced the previous version of Application Insights in all appropriate detail already as well. The primary focus of Application Insights is to understand usage of your applications, in essence, understand which applications are not used at all, which are most used, and then also understand the design of your applications, starting with design impact, which is computed by number of forms and views and design elements, and more complex calculation models that also look at average number of fields per form, average number of columns per views, as well as other metrics, to give you a good understanding of how many of your applications have exceptional complex design down to medium and very low complexity. That being said, we'll look at the dashboard in just a minute. Still continuing on what Application Insights is, there's a free license for customers on active IBM Domino maintenance. Should you not be an active SNS, then you can contact us for an evaluation license. The evaluation license, with a free license, reveals the following for applications and mail-in database instances in your environment. It gives you an environment overview and inventory of all your database instances, meaning it tells you how many databases you have, how many views are used inside of your databases, how many users use your applications across the board, how many users are not active at all in the environment, and similar things are provided through the overviews. It carves out the design complexity for the 50 most complex applications in your environment and shows you all details for those for free. It also gives you the list of the 50 most used applications, both across rich client as well as browser clients. And then lastly, it provides detailed code insights and does design similarity analysis for 50 out of the above, so for roughly 25 of the most complex and 25 of the most used. We'll cover some of the code insights a little bit later as well. Code insights do things like searching for mail interfaces, hard-coded server names, IP addresses, interfaces to other databases, and a lot more. In case you like what you see from the free license, whether the evaluation license or the one provided from IBM, which whereby the IBM version is still valid until April next year, the value of Application Insights can easily be increased through so-called Application Insights value packs. Those can be bought in chunks of 500 database instances, and you don't need value packs for all of your databases. So if you would want more insights and increase from the initial 50 up to 550, then you can just buy a single value pack, so that there's no such thing as being under licensed or whatever. You just go with licensing and increase it as you need it. A value pack unlocks all of the above mentioned functionality for the next 500 most used databases, and the very first value pack also unlocks all unused instances. So there's an immediate massive value from just buying a single value pack in increasing your view into your entire environment. Switching to the benefits of modernizing your applications with Application Insights, then let's focus on the right part of the slide here, where the general goal of Application Insights is to help you narrow down the scope of what you want to do with your environment. So rather than looking at 100% of all applications for either sunsetting, modernization, optimization, migration, or whatever, is in looking at which applications are most important to the business, together with those, with the information of which of those applications have which complexity, you greatly narrow down the scope of which databases to start with. As a particular example, it doesn't make much sense looking at the most complex application if nobody uses it. If you have applications that are used by many, then it most probably is a good idea to start with one of those applications that has medium complexity, to then take it from there. That being said, let's dive right into what's new in Application Insights 1.5. As a summary, there have been numerous performance improvements in both the back end and the front end. We've added a new option to rescan select databases as well as failed databases or previously inaccessible databases. And for that, let me just quickly switch on over into Application Insights and just give you the general idea here. In the previous version, when you looked up at the status bar and you would click on the status, you would get the list of the applications where the design collection, for whatever reason, may have failed. And what we've added is the simple option to just rescan either failed instances or filtered results. So if you were to filter the below list and then just wanted to rescan those, or previously inaccessible instances, as after you've fixed access problems to a particular server or databases, that you can just simply rescan them with the click of a button. We've also started to add a massive component called AgGrid, which is an extremely popular HTML5 grid used by many companies out there. And AgGrid has been so awesome to help us integrate AgGrid Enterprise into Application Insights, which allows for massively improved data integration and data interaction. So allowing us to help you export the data from Application Insights, and later down the road in future versions also provide pivot tables, also larger table navigation, so rather than providing you with page tables, allowing you to just scroll through them, as well as better sorting for numbers and similar things. Let me just quickly depict that as well. So switching back over into Application Insights and then into the general catalog, you will now have the options to just download the catalog data that you see as CSV or right into Excel. And that goes for pretty much the different column set that you can look at, whether that's usage metrics or the newly added view characteristics that we'll be looking at, or spreading of code languages, and a lot of other metrics that you can visualize in the catalog. So that showed export in catalog. So you can now further on work with the data from Application Insights outside by simply exporting it. Another great feature is usage and design details for views in both the catalog as well as in each of the database details being visualized. So let me switch back to Application Insights again. And in the catalog, let's just pick one application. And then there's a new tab here for views, in which you can see how many views a particular application has and how many of those are effectively being used. So here you can see in this particular database, whilst it has many more views, only 18% of those views are effectively being used. Now let's get into some of the details of those views, and we'll just browse the view list, where you can then see all the views together with their aliases, which of the views have an index, together with various properties in the views that might be of interest to further investigate. This is also one of the things where you see the first power of AgGrid, so allowing for much more flexible sorting and interacting with data inside of Application Insights. Continuing on with what's new in Application Insights 1.5, the two most prominent features, or three most prominent features, are pretty much on this slide. And we're starting off with usage by department. Usage by department is fed from a field in the Domino address book. By default, that's the department field, but it's configurable if you wanted to use a different field to serve as the particular data point for usage inside of Application Insights. Now in Application Insights 1.5, when you go to usage and you then switch over onto the department folder, then what you can see is usage across the entire company, and then further down for the respective departments of what particular activity do which departments actually create inside that one particular database. That's typically sorted by activity, so amount of activity, most active departments being at the top, least active being at the bottom. But obviously you can also sort this by department name, so you have it by alphabet. What you can then easily see is how many of the activity by those departments is read-write activity versus just read activity. Think of a phone book where there would be massive read activity by most of the users and then only very few read-write activity by those entities, whether it's users or agents or whatever, that actually feed the phone book with actual data. There's one important note here, is that by default, for privacy reasons, the default activity measurements for the users by department, any department with less than 15 employees will be rendered up into the company level. You can request a free license from Panagenda to get rid of that restriction, as long as you confirm in that request that it's okay for you to dig down to the user level. So we're making sure that in countries like Germany and France and others where privacy issues may be a point to consider here, that by default ApplicationInsights does not disclose usage for departments with less than 15 employees. That's rendered up into the top level here, like Panagenda. In our department, we've here, as you can clearly see this, just changed that threshold. Secondly, there's another tab here that gives you the user list for all of the departments, which by default is also not enabled in the default release of ApplicationInsights 1.5. Similarly, you can just request a free license to simply also disclose that. Again, that's for mere privacy reasons, and it doesn't cost anything other than sending an email and saying we would like the license to disclose the user list and or to be able to adjust the threshold for computing departments to as many users as you want. That being said, let me switch right on back into the overview. Whoops, and that was one too many. So once again, the source field can be customized. Also, as a side note, some customers don't have any field in the public address book that could serve as a reference point to render usage by department. For those customers, we offer custom engagements where we can import data from SAP or PeopleSoft or whatever other system may hold the data for you. That's just not part of what ApplicationInsights does out of the box. And now for two other extremely exciting functionality that we've added to ApplicationInsights 1.5, which is custom insights as well as code search. Let me switch back into ApplicationInsights. And before we go into custom insights and code search, just as a reminder for those who may not have seen it, in each application there is so-called design insights where we look at the code for specific categories like web design related findings, mail dependencies, or similar. Any such findings, like for example paper printing in this particular example, you can then click on that finding and look at the design element and the particular code of where we found that particular piece of code. Let's take one with more code. So here you have an example where we found a code element that suggests that somebody has coded for the web. And here you can see that particular finding right there, which is HTML tags right in the code. Those design insights previously have been hard-coded across those particular categories, which we call rule sets. Each rule set has insights, which are these colorful kind of categories. And then behind these insights, again, are what we call code patterns to actually search for things. Now let's dive right into custom insights, where you see some of this in a different fashion again. Switching on over into manage, the first time you will see this, you'll see the rule set that you just saw right now together with a Panagenda logo, because we provide you with all the code and magic kind of behind what makes this happen. So you can see that in the rule set dependency on other databases, there's 3 insights that again form this, and behind these insights again are patterns that search for that particular occurrence of code. Same goes for mail dependencies, etc. And you can copy these patterns to either reuse them or you can extend them to create your very own ones. As one particular example, you could easily click on any of those insights to then understand what's behind those insights, which in this particular case is a pattern that looks for fields and code that again interacts with the address book. It's currently got this, no-go sign because it's a panagenda pattern, and you'd have to copy it rather than change it, just to make sure that the code insight base is not touched or altered, but you can easily extend it or customize it as you see fit. You'll be seeing in some of the patterns that we're looking at that some of the patterns behind this may look a little bit difficult to read. That's because we're using regular expressions here, and we'll be providing down the road post-release training videos of how to make this happen. Apart from that, many of you may be accustomed to regular expressions, but there's other ways to approach this as well. Let me give you a quick example of how this would typically go about, rather than just diving into the complexity of what we've been providing with this release. The easiest thing that you would do is you would go into code search and you would decide to search for something like, for example, Notes UI, as to understand which code elements are there that have Notes UI occurrences of text inside of code. The moment that you do that, you get a result. In this particular case, just the understanding of there are code blocks that obviously are a match to first understand is there anything that I would find if I were to search for something. You could be searching for a certain name of a workflow library or an old server name, and if you discover that you don't find a single old server name that you're looking for, there's no reason to create a custom insight for it. On the other hand, if you start experiencing with this and then understand that there are actual findings where Notes UI document or Notes UI workspace have been used, you may also come across code that just has Notes UI in it but doesn't refer to a Domino object. That's where the learning curve towards regular expressions becomes important to understand that sometimes it's not just looking for a word, but you may have to search for a word that has white space in front of it. Or you may be looking for something like this, when users do, whoops, sorry for that, do a DB lookup, and then you may want to search for DB lookups that do not contain double quote as the first parameter. That's all stuff that we've taken care of in our insights, and we'll be sharing that with the release of ApplicationInsights 1.5, so that you understand what you can do to create even more advanced queries. So when you then find a code search that makes you happy and you would want to add into the custom insight, then all you go into manage, you create your own patterns, assign that to insights, again assign that to rule set, either an existing one or a new one, and then with the next run, this will show up in each database details as to where the findings respectively are, what design element that was, etc. So this is massive for you to search your entire code base for whatever strings, server names, patterns, as you see fit. That being said, let me switch back to the slide deck. And I have one more thing on my list, which is ApplicationInsights includes two more exciting features that we're not demoing today, but we'll be revealing post-release. They are included in the release. We just need a little more time to document them for you to be able to understand them. But I want to specifically point them out that they will be in that release for use further down the route. First, custom queries. We also call that panagenda data miner. And in essence, what you've seen just now was custom insights or custom queries across code. Now, fairly often, customers also ask us for, could you tell us a list of all agents and particular properties of those agents? Could I have a list of all agents that have full access admin set as one of the run criteria for that particular agent. And that's what custom queries is all about, to not just look at code, but extend that into design elements and particular properties. So as pointed out here, think of a list of agents and all their properties. Think of views that make use of an at today statement in the select statement, or other things that make views run slow. So in essence, it extends the custom insights model into the areas of design elements and their particular properties. We'll be providing a growing number of custom queries soon after release for that particular area of application insights. So there will be various design queries from panagenda, and there will also be a query from We4IT for Avido to understand key metrics of which applications serve as best candidates for Avido. If you have one or more value packs, you will also be able to add your own queries. That's not to be confused with custom insights, where you can create your own custom insights even with the IBM free version. For the data miner component, you at least need one application insights value pack. Panagenda Data Miner also comes with APIs, which will then allow you to access custom query results in JSON, CSV, or HTML formats. So think of it that way, by talking or by accessing a URL, you can then say, I'd like the list of agents and consume that somewhere else. So we're extremely opening up application insights for use of the data and findings that you reveal by interacting with application insights outside of application insights. As said, both of these features will be revealed in detail after the release, but will be part of it. The general release date of ApplicationInsights 1.5 is October 16, so just a couple of days down the road this year. And we very much look forward to be hearing from you there and to work with you on further enhancement. If you're missing anything or have great ideas for future releases of Application Insights, don't hesitate to contact us, please. Otherwise, I'd be opening up the round for questions and answers.
All right, thank you, Florian. There were, in fact, a couple of questions that maybe you can go into. Before doing that, though, we did have a comment that some of the text in the AI demo was somewhat small. If there is anything that you want more detail to, then just send us an email. We're more than happy to provide a one-on-one demonstration of the new features or the old, whatever you need. Okay, so the first question was in regards to the usage by department. If the company doesn't have HR data in the NAB, but elsewhere, for example, the SAP, yeah, can they still use AI and the new feature?
Sure, they can use it anyway. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, where through custom engagements, customers can just contact us, and we can then talk about integrating data from SAP or PeopleSoft or any other HR system where the data might come from.
Fantastic. And another thing you did mention, but maybe it's possible in a quick demonstration just to highlight the most exciting parts of it again, is that much of the AI information is database centric, but what user activities can be tracked?
Let me show you some parts right there. So one thing you may have noticed when we were looking at usage is that actually Application Insights has quite a level of detail, more where you couldn't have noticed because actually I didn't show it. So let's dive right into this based on our very own data for this particular database. And what you can see here is actually kind of then, a list right here that serves as data points into the application, where you can then see actual numbers for not just reads and writes, but also transactions and other metrics. I'm just going to surf out of here because it's actual panagenda data. And in essence, the point here being that Application Insights visualizing most of the information on a database-centric level, like how complex is a particular application, how much is it used. Application Insights has the same amount of information on a user-centric, department-level-centric, or general company-level view. First of all, we're planning to further down the road to potentially also add more user-centric views to the whole universe. The before mentioned data miner component, the custom queries, will allow you to also dive into other metric areas of application insights that we don't surface from out of the box.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, there's also another question from an attendee who has raised his hand. I might unmute him quickly so you can ask the question in person. If you'd like to go ahead with your question. Okay.
It's always daunting. I totally understand
not paying attention. Okay, so I'll ask the question that is written into the question panel anyway. Maybe that answers it and he can watch it in the recording afterwards. The question states, does it do any static code analysis suggesting good practices and identifying any code vulnerabilities and any remediation methods?
I'd say pretty much yes, except for the last one on remediation. That's always, leaves fair room for discussion. But let's once again, and actually I could have just stayed on the page where I am. Let's look at some of the design insights there right again. And what you can see right there are things like, us finding hard-coded file names, which most probably is not best design practice. So you may want to just, mitigate things like hard-coded file names as one particular example. There are other things in code that we look for, and let me switch on over into custom insights and patterns right there. Which are things like, interfaces to an address book or operating system dependencies, or even just things like, let me just show you that, code that contains a beep. One of the functions that we see fairly rarely, but sometimes you see them in code. Not suggesting you have to fix a beep. It's an interesting design finding. One of the other things where there's a pattern for example, is a so-called developer warning, and I just have to find it in the right way, which is, and that's an interesting one, actually option-based one. It's one of the things that when in code, a developer has parked an option-based one, then all arrays and stuff like that don't start with 0 but with 1, and it's something that is pretty ugly to stumble across when you're looking at somebody else's code and working in a function where you're not entirely sure whether it's 0 or 1 based. So there's various things that we look for in application insights from out of the box for whether an application seems to be web-enabled or seems to have code that doesn't suggest it's easy to web enable, or whether it has operating system dependencies. The finding per se should in most cases tell a developer what that finding would mean. So I'm assuming that if a developer understands there's an option-based finding, I don't have to explain it, at least not to a developer. When we find things like operating system dependencies, and you then find a declare function towards an external DLL, I suppose we don't have to explain it, and it's understandable towards the developer what to do with that information. What needs to be done with that information depends on what you are aiming to do. If you want to mobilize an application, then a declare function most probably is problematic because it won't, won't be easy to modernize on a mobile phone. You'll have to find something as an equivalent. When you're looking at things like paper printing, then that's always a good idea to understand that maybe you'll want to look at the application towards browser modernization from a different perspective. So the overall number of findings, and again, as pointed out earlier, we have 62 patterns looking at something like 300 different code occurrences across formulas, LoadScript, and Java, should give you a good idea to work with towards modernizing your environment the way that you need it. If that's not enough, then you should know where to find us and just contact us and either tell us you're having a hard time to make head or tails of what we're presenting you there. That's what we're here for. You can always find a human being at Panagenda to talk to, and then go into all the details of how we can better help you modernize your applications and your landscape.
Brilliant, and I think that's the best way to go about it. As such, there's no questions left in the webinar panel. I'm sure that everyone will want to ask the questions personally and also relevant to their very own business. So I'm going to end the webinar now, and recordings will be sent out within the next 24 hours. And we look forward to hearing back from you. Floor, any last words?
I could make sure that we include a couple of screenshots in the presentation. If the person who said the text was, too small or difficult to read, would just point out which particular areas he would be most interested in, or she. That would be helpful. If not, I'll try and find a couple of screenshots that you can then refer to from the screen recording, apart from, as Danny mentioned, sending out the recording where most probably you can't zoom into it. But I'll try and provide a couple of screenshots in the deck that we'll be sending out as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you everyone else for attending. Remember, the next 3 webinars are coming up in our series, the link to which will also be sent in the follow-up email. Everyone else have a very nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.